It's the Brian Lehrer Show on WNYC. I'm Bridget Bergen, sitting in for Brian today. We've got two big stories out of New Jersey this week. First, Republican Congressmember Kean Jr. returned to Congress on Tuesday after a previously unexplained 116-day absence, during which he missed more than 100 votes. In a 5-minute speech to a nearly empty House chamber, he announced that he'd been hospitalized several months earlier after being diagnosed with depression in the early spring. He said he didn't disclose the illness right away because he expected to return to office in a matter of weeks. Meanwhile, New Jersey Governor Mikie Sherrill passed her first state budget. She was able to deliver on many of her central campaign promises, but was stymied on some of the policy reforms she'd hoped to make. The nearly $61 billion budget, the largest in the state's history, was finalized at the buzzer, with Governor Sherrill signing the bill Tuesday evening, hours before the deadline, to avoid a government shutdown. Lawmakers had introduced the bill just 2 days earlier, racing to push it through the state assembly and Senate by Monday. They finished voting only after holding late-night, closed-door negotiations, unable to uphold Sherrill's pledge to make the budget process transparent and orderly. With me now to discuss these stories from the Garden State is my colleague Michael Saul Warren, New Jersey reporter for WNYC and Gothamist. Hey, Michael.
Hey, Bridget, how you doing?
I'm well. And I want to start with a clip of Congressman Kean's floor speech announcing his return and the reason for his absence.
But I believe that I owe an explanation to the people of New Jersey's 7th District, to my colleagues in this chamber, and to the American people for my absence. Several months ago, due to health concerns, I entered the hospital for some testing. I did not believe that this would result in a long-term stay. I was given the diagnosis of depression.
Michael, Representative Kean was gone for nearly 4 months, and the uncertainty and speculation caused by his prolonged, unexplained absence seemed to increase every day he was away. So tell me about the general attitude in New Jersey toward Kean during that long stretch of absence.
Well, Bridget, it was certainly a a point of conversation across the state. I mean, it was a big mystery, right? Where has the congressman gone? And the timing of it in the lead up to the primaries as a competitive race on the Democratic side to see who his opponent this fall was unfolding. There was just a lot of attention on the district, and it was a pretty inopportune time for him to go missing.
My next question to you, Michael, was, given how early it is, how are Jerseyans reacting? But before I had even asked people to have called in to tell us how they feel about Kean's absence. So I'm going to jump straight to Wendy in Springfield. Wendy, you're on WNYC.
Yes, I'm a constituent of District 7. I am sorry that Congressperson Kean was depressed and sorry for his family, but he needed to tell us what was going on. When Fetterman was treated for depression, he told people, "You don't do this. We are the people who voted him in." And the other point, the last point I want to make is that even before this illness, we have not had a live town hall with him, and we have been asking and asking and asking. No, I have never seen him. And we've been asking and asking and asking. No live town hall. So that's how I feel about it.
Wendy, thank you so much for your call. Michael, are you hearing much of that, or are you hearing some different reactions from constituents?
No, I think Wendy's sentiments pretty much sum up the gist of what I hear from folks when I talk to people in the district. I mean, the people who are politically active in the district, I should say, I've definitely been out and about in some Union County parks trying to talk to people who are enjoying their days, who were maybe less tuned in and didn't have much to say. But when you get to people who are paying attention to what's been going on and where the congressman is and is not, the caller pretty much summed up how most people feel.
Listeners, particularly those of you from New Jersey, we want to hear your thoughts and questions about Congressmember Kean's absence, his return, the way it was handled. And in a few minutes, we'll be talking about New Jersey's new budget, the biggest in the state's history. We want to know your feelings about which parts of the bill passed and which weren't, and how you feel about the overall budget. You can call or text us at 212-433-WNYC. That's 212-433-9692. We're putting a special call out particularly for listeners from New Jersey on our two big Jersey stories. One of the things that I think I saw a lot of reaction to through social media, at least, Michael, as Congressmember Kean returned to the floor, was this sense that, there are a lot of people who work in jobs where an absence of that prolonged length wouldn't be tolerated. They wouldn't have access to that amount of leave time. They wouldn't have access to that kind of treatment and care that hopefully the Congress member received, and that these aren't necessarily policies that his party, the Republican Party, has been particularly supportive of in legislatures. What kind of responses are you hearing on that front?
I think that particularly from people in the political sphere, that's the main point. We got the statement from Rebecca Bennett, who is his Democratic challenger this fall, where she basically said, wishing him well and a full recovery, but immediately pivoted to his time in office, what she considered his failure to stand up to Trump policies that have harmed people in the 7th District, including cutbacks to health care. And that has been the sentiment from a lot of constituents that I've spoken to as well. I mean, the caller just mentioned the difference between how Congressman Kean has handled this and how Senator Fetterman in Pennsylvania handled his own mental health troubles and transparency around that led to advocacy. So it'll be interesting to see. For me, I'll be interested to see how this plays out more on the campaign trail. I think it can be kind of a tricky thing to talk about, right? A person's personal health situation. But when it is a public official, it's unavoidable.
Well, I'm going to bring in two callers who I think kind of have the differing views on sympathy towards Congressmember Kean's situation. I want to start with Bob in Brooklyn Heights. Bob, you're on WNYC.
Hey, hi. I want to say, listen, I was recently hospitalized somewhat less than voluntarily for depression, and I have to say, what happened at the end when you're discharged, I had a conversation with the psychiatric resident there, and she said, what she said to me was, listen, nobody's going to believe you. This is either you're lazy or you are so insane you should not have your job anymore, whatever your job might be. I understand Congressman Kean is in a special kind of job. So all I have to say is, depression. I mean, I don't understand why we think your kidneys are screwing up. And we understand that, and you need some time away from work, and you're going to do that. But your brain, and just another organ, is also doing that,
sure.
And you can't have that time.
So,
and I'm not a conservative. I'm not. I don't get to vote in New Jersey, but I wish Representative Kean nothing but well, and I'm glad to see him back at work.
Bob, thanks for that call. Someone seeking a little sympathy for Congressmember Kean. Nina in Hackensack, New Jersey, you're on WNYC.
Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit of what you were already saying, but I really believe that if Kean wants sympathy for his ailment, he needs to renounce his party altogether. You cannot say you're a Republican and then come to your constituents and say, please excuse me, I was having a mental health crisis, because you're supporting Robert Kennedy, who is trying to dissuade people from taking medication that helps depression. You are taking away people's health care left and right. You're probably taking away access to medical leave for lots of people. I mean, I probably am just falling short of, a dozen policies enacted by the Republican Congress and Trump's cabinet that would, kneecap anyone else who has depression or any kind of long-term health crisis. So to me, this just reeks of the ultimate hypocrisy of Republicans in general. And I'd love to see Senator Kean, or Congressperson Kean, rather, address that head on and explicitly and say, I cannot in good faith any longer be part of the Republican Party, or else I don't want to hear his excuses.
Sure. Nina, thank you for your perspective. So the sort of two sides of the coin there, so to speak. Michael, one listener texted, is it true that Kean voted against paid leave but has been taking his pay while absent? Is that something that you know about?
Off the top of my head, Bridget, I don't know. I'd have to go back and check on that.
So let's talk a little bit more about some of the confusion regarding Congressmember Kean's absence, because it was at the national level, too. The part of New Jersey Kean represents is considered a swing district, and Republicans worried and are still worrying that his seat could go Democratic in the fall. Michael, what makes District 7 so important?
District 7 is by far the most competitive of New Jersey's 12 congressional districts. It was recently held by Democrat Tom Malinowski, who Kean unseated to take office in the first place. And the district had been a bit more Democratic, but it gained more Republican votes during the last round of redistricting. But and as the political landscape around the nation has leaned more in the favor of Democrats over the past year or so, this district has very much become a centerpiece and pretty much the main one to watch in New Jersey. So yeah, there's been a lot of spotlight on Kean even before he went missing. His actions were going to be scrutinized, and he was going to face a very tough re-election campaign, and that's playing out now.
What kind of reaction is Congressmember Kean getting from his colleagues within the Republican Party? When we saw Senator Fetterman, who you mentioned, return after his own struggles with depression, Democrats seem to sort of rally around him. Are Republicans doing the same for Kean?
It seems to be. I have not been following that side as closely as other parts of the story, I'll be honest.
Sure.
But I have seen plenty of supportive comments from his Republican colleagues that are wishing him well and saying that they're glad to have him back in office. There's a lot of confidence being projected from local Republican candidates that the congressman will be able to pull off his reelection campaign, and that voters in the district will be sympathetic to his need to take time away for his personal health. So they're showing support and confidence, but we'll have to see.
So we have a whole bunch of callers who are still responding to the return of Congressman Kean. We'll see if we can get a couple more in, but we're going to shift gears now and talk more about New Jersey's budget. Governor Mikey Sherrill passed the largest budget in the state's history. In your reporting, you characterized it as sort of a mixed bag for Sherrill, who, got some of her priorities, but wasn't able to make some of the cuts she had been gunning for. So let's dig in there. Let's start with the school budget, one of Sherrill's biggest wins. She was setting aside a record $12.4 billion for school aid, but some lawmakers are saying that their districts are getting stiffed. So why is that?
Yeah, this is a long-running point of controversy in New Jersey. It's the school aid formula. It's the algorithm that determines how that $12.4 billion is divided among New Jersey's 600 or so local school districts. 167 districts are actually going to see decreases in aid this coming year. So the vast majority, or I shouldn't say the vast majority, but the majority of districts are getting more money, but a lot of them are not. The way that the formula works to be as simplistic as possible, and apologies to the policy experts out there, but basically, it determines how much money a district can reasonably raise from its taxpayers, and then it determines how much money that district needs to adequately meet the needs of its students. And the number of students that have special needs, or that might be English language learners, or that might come from low-income households, are weighted more heavily. And then whatever the difference between what the district could be expected to raise and what the district needs is generally what the formula tries to fill. So historically, urban districts have benefited more than suburban and rural districts. And so again, this year, Republicans who represent predominantly rural places in the state have complained that yes, there's record amounts of school aid in the aggregate, but their districts are not getting as much of it as they think they should. And they are calling for the formula to be updated. And that's something that Cheryl says, the governor says, she wants to see as well. She just won't say how quickly she wants it done.
We have a listener who texted, "I'm a public school teacher in Union County, New Jersey, and I was hoping for some more attention in this new budget to the budget crisis most school districts are facing currently. It has been something that is getting worse, and it ultimately affects all our children. I'm hoping that the governor will find some way to fix the issues affecting our school budgets in the near future." That's a listener in Westfield, New Jersey. So kind of going to the situation you described there, Michael. The budget creates new revenue for the state by eliminating some of its tax breaks for businesses, including ones created to help small businesses after the 2008 recession. Would you say that's the most controversial item in the budget?
I think it depends on where you stand. If you're a small business owner or somebody with business interests, I think it probably is. I think that reforms to property tax relief programs also drove a lot of the conversation around the budget this year. But yeah, there was a lot of conversation and criticism, particularly from Republicans in the business community, about the efforts to raise revenue on the backs of the business sector. Democrats approved the measure and gave Governor Cheryl the win there. She can now say that she didn't raise taxes on individual New Jerseyans. Critics would argue that that's a win in name only, because the businesses will almost certainly pass the new cost down to consumers or people who use their goods. So yeah, it was a point of contention, and we'll have to see how the business community adapts to it.
One cut that Cheryl was able to pass is a reform that removes senior citizens who earn more than $200,000 a year from a property tax rebate program that formerly included those earning up to $500,000. Was there friction around that item?
Yes, that's the Stay in J program, and this was one of, if not the biggest hurdle in negotiations to handle. I mean, the program was enacted in 2023 and was kind of a signature policy by Assembly Speaker Craig Coughlin, who still holds that position. So when Governor Cheryl made her budget proposal in the spring and she called for these changes, it kind of immediately set up a fight within the Democratic Party leadership over whether or not to do it. They ultimately landed on a situation where now Stay in J is going to, have an income eligibility cap at $200,000, which is less than half of what it previously was. But it's going to maintain the maximum benefit at $6,500. Cheryl had originally called for that to go down to $4,000. So the biggest rebates people can get out of this program will still be $6,500, but the benefits are now going to be paid out on a sliding scale, so that folks on the lower side of the income spectrum, basically up to $100,000, will be eligible for the full 6,500, and then people making between 100,000 and 200,000 income will get benefits less than that.
All right, so we've hit on a couple of Governor Sherrill's big wins, but one thing the governor did not deliver was on her pledge that this year's budget process was going to be orderly and transparent. How did that all fall apart, Michael?
That is the story of Trenton, at least in recent years. There is a constitutional requirement that New Jersey have a budget in place by July 1st, or the government will shut down. And there's also a requirement that a budget bill sit untouched for consideration for a full calendar day before it gets a final vote. And I mentioned that last part because it came into play this year. Last week, kind of early in the week, Governor Sherrill and top lawmakers announced they had reached the framework of a deal, but we didn't have a bill. And the week went by and we still didn't have a bill. And eventually we got to Sunday night. The Senate and Assembly Budget Committees convened, and a bill was introduced in the late evening, I think around 9 or 10 p.m. And they had to have that bill passed out of committee by midnight Sunday so that it could sit all Monday so that they could do the final votes on Tuesday. Really taking it down to the wire. And it pretty much flew in the face of what Governor Sherrill had asked lawmakers to do. She had wanted this budget to be done and in hand well before the end of June. At least that's what she said when she gave her budget proposal in March. And that just didn't happen. Now, Democrats would say, look, we had hours upon hours upon hours of public testimony gathered through budget hearings throughout the spring, and that in and of itself was a bit of a significant piece of transparency. But at the end of the day, most of the lawmakers in that chamber voted on a budget bill that realistically they couldn't have been expected to fully read or analyze.
Wow. Well, New York City and New Jersey, giving each other a run for their money on who can get their budget done the latest. We're going to leave it there for now. My guest was Michael Saul Warren, New Jersey reporter for Gothamist and WNYC. Hey, Michael, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Bridget.
WNYC's journalism and storytelling is heard by millions of passionate listeners. Sponsors of our programming gain our listeners' attention and their respect. Learn about how your organization can support WNYC and WNYC Studios at sponsorship.wnyc.org.
The United States is about to mark its 250th anniversary.
And so on the Global Story podcast from the BBC, we're telling surprising tales of American influence on the world stage and in ordinary people's lives all across the globe.
We have this ability to export our story, and a lot of people have bought it.
I feel like the American dream is alive but not well.
From the BBC, it's the United States at 250.
Listen wherever you get your podcasts or find us on YouTube.